All right, so get this. We're going deep today.
Deep? How deep?
Deep into the employment cycle.
Oh, okay, got it.
Which is basically like it's the whole journey an employee takes with a business
Yeah.
from like the very beginning to the very end.
The whole shebang.
Yeah, the whole shebang. And we'll be looking at the three major phases: establishment, maintenance, and termination.
So this is relevant to everyone, really,
Oh, yeah,
because
absolutely.
we've all been employees.
Right.
Or even if you're running a business,
Yeah.
it can be a really great advantage to kind of wrap your head around this whole
Framework.
this whole framework.
So let's get started with phase one, establishment. I always think about it like building a house.
Okay, I like that.
You need a good foundation.
You need a good foundation,
Yeah,
right?
and if you want the house to last.
It's true. And it's the same when you're talking about like the relationship
Yeah.
between an employee and an employer.
Right.
It all starts with getting the right people
For the right jobs.
in the right roles at the right time.
It's like a puzzle.
It is.
Yeah.
And it's more than just like, oh, we need someone who can, write code. There's a lot of planning that goes into it.
So what goes into that planning?
Well, first you've got job analysis,
Okay.
which is all about really figuring out what the job is.
Like, what does that person actually do all day?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what are those daily tasks? What skills do they need?
Right.
What are their responsibilities? You're basically making a blueprint for that position.
Okay. And then after that comes job design.
Exactly. So job design is more about how the work gets done.
Oh.
So you take that blueprint that you made in job analysis and you say, okay, how do we want to organize this?
Yeah.
How much freedom does this person have?
Are they going to work on a team?
Are they going to work by themselves?
Okay.
It's about making the job as good as it can be,
Yeah.
both for the company and the employee.
That makes sense. So, like, let's say we're hiring for a marketing role. Would I just write, like, make social media posts?
No, you'd go deeper.
Deeper. Okay.
You'd think about who they're trying to reach,
Okay.
the brand voice.
Okay.
Are they looking at the analytics?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
are they making reports about engagement and stuff?
So I need to think about what skills they would need for that.
Yeah, like, do they need to know Photoshop or something?
Right. Okay.
That's what makes good job design.
It's more than just like a one-sentence description.
Right.
Cool. So we've got the blueprint. We know what the job looks like. Now we need to actually find someone.
Right.
So that's recruitment.
Recruitment.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you decide, do you look inside the company or do you look outside?
Internal versus external.
Exactly.
And how do you decide which one to go with?
Well, sometimes you need someone who already knows how to do the job really well.
Right. Who can just jump right in.
And in that case, you might look outside the company.
To people who've done that kind of thing before. But other times, it might be better to promote someone from within the company.
Right. Someone who already knows the culture.
Exactly. Knows how things work.
Yeah. And might need a bit more training, but who you think has the potential to really grow.
It's like picking the right tool for the job.
It really is.
Yeah. So no matter what, though, you're going to end up with a bunch of people who want the job,
Right.
and then you have to pick the best one.
That's selection.
Selection. Okay.
So that's when you really look at the applications,
Yeah.
do the interviews, and you might even have them take some tests.
Tests. Like what kind of tests?
Well, like aptitude tests or even some psychological tests.
Wow. Psychological tests. What do those tell you?
Well, they can tell you things that a resume can't.
Okay.
Like, how good are they at solving problems?
Right.
What's their personality like?
Oh, interesting.
And are they going to be a good fit for the company culture?
Yeah, that's super important.
Like, for example, if a company is all about teamwork, they might give a test to see if someone's naturally a team player.
Makes sense.
So it's not just about, checking off boxes.
It's about finding someone who will really thrive there.
Exactly.
And don't forget, reference checks are important.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Super important, those. And background check.
We want to make sure everything lines up.
Yep. Got to make sure it all checks out.
Okay, so we found the perfect person.
Awesome.
Now we have to figure out all the detail.
Nitty gritty.
Yeah, like is it a full-time job,
Oh,
part-time
right.
contract,
You got to figure out all those employment arrangements.
employment arrangements, and of course the salary and benefits and all that.
Yeah, all the good stuff. The remuneration.
Remuneration.
Which is more than just the salary. It's a whole package.
Right.
The benefits, any bonuses, perks,
Yeah.
all that, because that's all part of keeping good employees happy.
It's like we talked about the puzzle earlier.
Yeah.
It's like putting all the pieces together to make sure it's a good experience for everyone.
Yeah. It's about that whole experience.
Okay, so we laid the foundation, found the right person, and figured out all the details. What's next?
Well, next comes phase 2, maintenance.
Okay.
And that's all about making sure that employee employer relationship stays strong.
We'll have to save that for next time, though.
We'll have to.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
All right, so we're back, and we're still cruising along with this employment cycle.
Still cruising?
Yep, we built that solid foundation with the establishment phase.
The foundation's there?
Right, and now it's all about making sure that foundation stays strong.
Yeah, that's phase 2. Maintenance.
Maintenance, all right.
And it's kind of like, when you get a new car,
Okay, yeah.
you don't just drive it off the lot and never take it in for a checkup.
Right, you got to change the oil.
Change the oil, rotate the tires.
And all that good stuff.
Keep it running smooth.
Otherwise, it's going to break down.
Exactly. And it's the same with employees. You got to keep investing in them.
Yeah, keep them engaged. Help them grow with the company.
All that good stuff.
So where do we even begin with that?
Well, I think the most important thing, especially at the beginning, is induction.
Induction, okay.
Yeah, you got to make that new employee feel welcome.
Like they're part of the team.
Exactly, like they belong.
You know what? I remember when I started my first job after college, I was so overwhelmed with information.
Oh, yeah.
It was like drinking from a fire hose.
It can be a lot, for sure.
So how do you make that process better? Less overwhelming,
Well, you got to structure it right.
Okay.
You don't want to just dump everything on them at once.
Right, all at once?
Maybe spread it out over a couple of weeks.
Okay.
Start with the basics,
The essentials, yeah.
like company history, the values, important policies, and then slowly introduce them to their team,
Okay.
their specific responsibilities, the tools they'll be using.
That makes a lot of sense.
It's all about setting them up for success.
Without overloading them.
Exactly.
Okay, so once they're settled in, it's time for training.
Training, yeah.
And that's not just like a one-time thing, is it?
No, training is ongoing.
Ongoing, okay.
It has to adapt as the employee grows.
And as the business changes?
Exactly. And what's really cool is that there are so many different ways to train people these days.
Oh, yeah, like what?
You've got the traditional classroom learning.
Like going to workshops and stuff?
Yeah, and then there's on-the-job training.
Learn by doing.
Yeah, learn by doing, and then there's all this amazing online stuff.
Like online courses and stuff?
Yeah, like you could learn almost anything online these days.
So many options.
It's amazing. But how do you choose what's right for each employee?
That's a good question.
Well, you have to be strategic about it.
Okay.
You got to look at their current skills.
See what they already know.
Yeah, and where the gaps are.
Yeah.
And then you got to match that with the company's goals.
Right, what the company needs.
So, for example, let's say you've got a sales team that's struggling.
Okay.
You wouldn't just throw any sales training at them.
You'd have to figure out why they're struggling.
Right, like what's the actual problem?
Is it their negotiation skills? Product knowledge?
Exactly. And then you tailor the training to fix those specific issues.
So it's all about making the training really count.
Targeted training.
Makes sense. All right, now let's talk about performance management.
Performance management.
Which I think a lot of people think is like just the annual review.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that can be scary.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be negative though, right?
No, not at all.
So how do you make it a good experience?
Well, it should be about growth.
Okay.
It should be collaborative.
Between the manager and the employee.
Exactly. Lots of feedback, open communication.
Setting goals together.
Yeah, figuring out how to help the employee improve.
So it's not about judging them for their past performance.
No.
It's about helping them do better in the future.
Exactly.
I like that.
You know what's really interesting? There's this thing called 360-degree feedback.
360-degree feedback, what's that?
So you get feedback not just from the employee's manager, but also from their coworkers,
Oh, wow.
people in other departments, even clients sometimes.
That's a lot of feedback.
It is, but it gives you a really well-rounded picture of the employee.
I can see how that would be helpful.
Yeah, it's a really good tool.
So we've talked about all these ways to make the maintenance phase work,
Right.
but sometimes things just don't work out.
True.
And that's when we have to think about phase 3, termination.
Termination, yeah.
And that can be tough for both the employee and the employer.
It can.
But it's important to remember that termination doesn't always mean someone messed up.
Right. Sometimes it's just circumstances.
Like the company downsizes or a job becomes obsolete.
If an employee decides they want to do something different.
Right, they want to move on.
And that's actually the difference between voluntary and involuntary termination.
Okay, so voluntary is when the employee decides to leave.
Exactly, like resigning or retiring.
And involuntary is when the employer decides to. And that can get a bit more complicated. So what are some of the reasons for involuntary termination?
Well, there are a lot of possibilities.
Okay.
Sometimes it's performance issues.
Like the employee isn't meeting expectations.
Yeah, or maybe they violated some company policy.
Okay.
Sometimes it's economic reasons.
The company has to lay people off.
Yeah, or restructure, and some jobs just aren't needed anymore.
That's tough.
It is.
And then there are situations where an employee might be dismissed for doing something wrong.
Right, like misconduct or breaking ethical rules.
Wow, so many things to think about.
There are?
And I imagine how a company handles these situations can really affect how people see them
Oh,
and
absolutely.
their reputation,
Yeah. It's super important to handle termination the right way.
ethically and legally.
Exactly.
So it's about being fair,
Being respectful
communicating clearly.
and offering support to the employee who's leaving.
So it's not just about saying goodbye and that's it.
No. You got to think about the human side of it.
There's always a human element.
Always.
We should probably talk more about that next time.
Yeah. We got a lot more to unpack with termination.
It's a big topic.
It is.
Okay, so we're back.
Back for the final round.
Yeah, the final part of our deep dive.
Into the employment cycle.
Employment cycle, exactly.
It's been quite a journey.
It has. We started with building that strong foundation, establishment,
Right.
then moved on to keeping things running smoothly with maintenance.
Keeping those gears turning.
And now we're at the sometimes tricky part, termination.
Termination, yeah, the end of the road.
It's interesting, though, how all these phases are connected, right?
Oh, absolutely. They all build on each other.
Yeah, you can't really have a good maintenance phase if you didn't do establishment.
Right. And then how you handle termination.
Yeah,
That can have a ripple effect.
it can.
Affect your reputation, even how you hire people in the future.
Yeah, it's all connected.
It's a chain reaction.
So as we wrap up this whole cycle,
Okay.
what are the big takeaways for our listeners?
I think the most important thing to remember is that the employment cycle isn't static.
It's not just this one set thing.
No, it's dynamic.
Okay.
Things are always changing.
Right. Businesses change, jobs change, even company cultures change.
Exactly. So both businesses and employees need to be ready to adapt.
Be flexible.
Be proactive.
Be ready to roll with the punches.
Yeah, that's how you thrive in today's world.
And I think along with that adaptability,
Yeah.
communication is key.
Oh, absolutely. Communication is huge.
Throughout the entire cycle, right?
From the very beginning.
Whether you're talking about job expectations, giving feedback.
Addressing concerns.
Yeah, all of that.
Open and honest communication.
It just makes everything run smoother.
Prevents misunderstandings.
Makes for a better work environment.
For everyone.
You know, it's amazing how many problems could be solved if people just talked more.
Right.
Be upfront, be transparent.
Saves a lot of headaches down the road.
Now, here's something for our listeners to think about.
Okay, I like this.
We've been looking at this whole cycle from the company's point of view, right?
Yeah, how to manage employees.
But what if we flip it?
Flip the script.
Look at it from the employee's perspective.
Oh, interesting.
How can you, as an employee, take control of your own journey?
Yeah, because it's easy to feel like you're just along for the ride,
Like you're just a cog in the machine.
but you're not.
You have the power to make choices, to shape your own experience.
So as you're moving through your career,
Yeah.
think about how you can grow, how you can communicate your needs.
Advocate for yourself.
Exactly. Remember, the employment cycle isn't something that just happens to you.
You can make it work for you.
You could be in the driver's seat.
That's a great point to end on.
I think so.
We've covered a lot of ground today,
We have.
but hopefully our listeners have a better understanding of the employment cycle now.
And maybe even some ideas for their own careers.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone.
It's been a pleasure.